Welcome everyone to another F3 track guide. We are around Imola this week and I love this track. It's one of my favourite tracks in iRacing, definitely within my top three, and I'd actually never driven an F3 car before around here today, so I've put plenty of practice in to put this together for you guys. I think it's a track that not only is going to reward fast lap times, of course every track rewards fast lap times, but more importantly clean and consistent lap times, because there's a couple of areas on this track, a couple of sectors that there's going to be a lot of incidents, and even on your own without anyone around you, overtaking maneuvers and so forth, they can be pretty much a race ender. In particular, for anyone who has raced Imola knows the chicane. It's bad enough in a GT3 car, let alone in an F3 car, as well as the added bonus of a number of sausage curbs littered around the track. So if anyone knows, that's not a great combination for an F3 car. But yeah, hopefully this track guide can combine the two, faster lap times and cleaner and consistent lap times, and we can get you some good results this week. So remember to hit that like and subscribe button. Remember to turn those notifications on. We are going to head into a slow drive-through at first with a flying lap followed up. And I'm also going to add a replay, far chase camera angle replay at the end for you guys to see as well. Let's get into it. So here we are guys on the start finish straight. Now as you come down, it slightly goes around to the left. So this is kind of an apex, but it isn't. But we want to keep as tight to this as we possibly can. Cover as little track as possible. Now you can see the braking markers start on your right hand side as we're coming into our first chicane, and it's a left to right. Now we're keeping an eye out for that 100 ball marker on our right hand side. Now we want to be as far over to the right as we can, and we're going to be braking just after it, and we're going to be shifting all the way down into third gear from sixth to third. And as soon as we start to see kind of the second sausage curb, we're going to be turning in. Now these sausage curbs are not our friends. They're not an F3 car's friends, and it's quite a prominent feature around Imola. They're on pretty much every corner around here, barring a couple of them, and we want to get as tight to them as possible, but without going over them, because if you go over them you'll suffer either damage or it will throw your car out. So we're coming in and we want to get on the apex and as close to these sausage curbs as we can. And as you go into the right hander, you're still in third gear, around about half throttle, and as you get onto this second curb, this second sausage curb here, you're going to be in full on the throttle. Third gear, into fourth, using the most of this curb on your left hand side, and then into this left hander, once again, close to the sausage curb as you can, all the while in third gear, full throttle, and then making the most of this runoff if necessary. You won't get an off track on this AstroTurf. You will only get it if you go to the end of the AstroTurf and end up on the grass, or if you touch the gravel. So, but you shouldn't need to use that unless you're in a battle and you get forced off. So as we head down, we're shifting up. You'll get up to fifth gear, and what we're keeping an eye out for is the 50 bald marker on the right hand side. And once again, we've got another chicane. Now this is a bit more of a tricky chicane because it's a very fast entry into the left-hander, and then the right-hander's a lot slower. And now this is a section of the track where you will see a lot of people end up crashing and just going off track. So if you can keep it clean through here and be relatively fast, I would say consistency is the biggest thing here rather than actual speed, because no one's really going to overtake you in this section, in this actual chicane. It's only on the exit of the chicane where they're going to end up possibly overtaking you. So as long as you ensure that you get a good exit running down into the hairpin, you should be okay. So this is more about consistency here. That's my outlook on things. I've done a lot of practice. This is one of my weak points of the track. So there's a lot of time for me to be made up here. But during the race, I'm definitely going to be looking to be more consistent and clean more than anything. So back to it, if we go to the 50-yard marker, we're going to be travelling with some speed and we're going to start to slightly trail brake, and once again getting as close to this second sausage curb as we can on this apex, and keeping it as far left as we reasonably can without losing control of the car, because we're going at some speed. Now the right hander here is a lot tighter than you think, and you really need to kind of put a lot more, slow the car down quite considerably, a lot more than you think. So shifting down into 4th gear before we get into this right hander, and once again as close to this sausage curb as we can, and then as you come out of the corner, full throttle. Now the car will move over to the left and you may get quite close to the gravel. Use the AstroTurf, it's there to be used, it's there for a reason. You won't get an off track, you only get an off track if you go on the gravel. Come back off that, run off, and then as we head down into the hairpin, once again keeping an eye out for the 50 bulb marker on the right hand side, and we'll be braking once again just a bit after it, shifting down into 2nd gear. And it's very important, guys, to keep it tight, very tight around here, because there's so much time that could be lost, sometimes even half a second or so if you run a little bit wide. Be careful on the first couple of laps when you've got cold tyres. Shorten your braking distance, because the car just can lock up or just roll wide and you just lose a lot of time. So if you can keep it tight on the first couple of laps around here, like you should do for the whole race, you can probably gain some good positions, a good amount of positions on the run up the hill. So 2nd gear, and as we get round it, full throttle, making the most of the runoff if necessary as well. May use a little bit of it, and then it's all the way up to the hill. Very fast section of Imola. Yet again, we're looking out for the 50 bald marker. Now as we come up here, our braking point is going to be a shadow. Now on the right hand side, if you can see, just past the 50 ball marker, we've got 3 sets of shadows of trees. Now this is a fast left-hander. We'll be in 5th gear at this point, and we will be braking on or just before this middle shadow, and we'll be shifting a slight dab on the brakes, and we'll be shifting into 4th, into the apex. And then as we kind of get about 3/4 around the apex, we're full on the throttle again. And now that's going to take the car over to the right hand side onto this runoff area where you got concrete and so forth. Now this AstroTurf, use it. You don't lose any grip on here, it's not slippery, it's there to be used, and that's where all the time is. You don't want to keep it really on the track, you want to use as much of this as possible without going too far over onto the concrete. Now you can probably get your wheels slightly onto the concrete section, but you will, it's a very fine line between an off track. Now this is, if you do get an off track though, unless you go severely wide, if you do slightly go onto the concrete, just keep your foot down, don't lift, keep that foot down, because you can rejoin without getting a slow down. As far as I'm aware, there's no slow downs on this section. The next couple of sectors they're very harsh with the slow downs, but you can just keep your foot down and come back onto the track. So we head down into probably definitely the 2 hardest sectors on the track. Now as we head down, keep an eye on the 50 marker, which is when we start to turn in. We'll be in 5th gear at this point. You can cut this curb slightly, and as you cut this curb and run over this curb, you start to trail brake. Trail brake, we're not braking hard. Down into 4th, down into 3rd, keeping it wide, because we still want to carry momentum. You don't want to get the car into a complete stop. and then we're turning in, and once again keeping it as tight to these sausage curves as we can without actually going over them. It's a very fine line here, I've found. Plenty of times in practice I've thrown my car off, but keep it tight to that curve as you can. And then this is probably one of the most difficult sections here. As you come out, don't be too hasty on the throttle, because it's so easy to get an off track, and an off track here pretty much results in a slowdown. Doesn't matter how far over you are, if it's just a slight off track, you will get a slowdown. So you want to use the curb, probably about half, it's around about half on, half off, and then we slightly come back onto the track rather than run up the curb, up the apex, because the car can bottom out, and as you can see, it runs out pretty quickly and you can end up on the grass before you know it. So full throttle all the way up to the dreaded chicane. Now I love Imola, but the chicane here is just an absolute nightmare. So keeping an eye out for that 50 ball marker. We're braking on it, just before it, all the way down into third gear. And what we're keeping an eye out for, guys, is these lights here. Now on the left, you're keeping an eye out for the one on the left hand side, because that is pretty much your turning point. So as you're braking, as you get to those lights, you turn in third gear, still braking, still braking. Now this is where things get tricky and things can go so wrong, and this is one of the other sections of the track where I said you'll see a lot of crashes and a lot of people, a lot of places to be gained if you can keep it clean through here. Now you really want to slow the car down, and what we're doing is we're trying to straighten the car up with that angle of approach so that the car kind of goes half and half, so that half of it is on the reds of the apex and the other half is on the black curb. Now I know you can hear that bottoming out, that is what it does. And then as you're pointing this way, it'll still braking, because you don't want to get on the throttle straight away or let off the brake, because you'll just carry too much speed through here and end up in the wall. And it's just, yeah, you just see so many deaths here. So still braking, turning again, trying to get half and half of the car, half on the black curb, half on the red and white. And then once you've come through, on the throttle. Now slow is better through that chicane. Don't try and go too fast, because you'll just throw the car off. You'll spin on exit as soon as you get on the throttle, or worst case you'll end up in the wall and your race will be ended. Now another thing to be wary of as well is this AstroTurf. Now you can use this runoff, but once again it's a very fine line, because if you end up on the right hand side of this and you get an off track, even no matter how little the off track is, even if your wheels are slightly over, doesn't matter, you will get a slowdown of a second. And it's important to make sure that you keep it clean through that chicane and you don't run off that runoff. You may get through that chicane nice and clean and then ruin it with a slowdown. And like I said, there's going to be so many places to be gained in that chicane there. So as we head down into the final couple of corners, we keep it tight to this right hander, and we are keeping an eye out for the 100 marker and the 50 marker. Now we don't actually have an actual braking reference here, it's kind of a feel, because we are braking around about the 75 mark, so pretty much in between 50 and 100. And we're going to be shift. We'll be in 6th gear at this point, changing all the way down into 3rd, trail braking, and taking this curb here. Now you'll see these last two corners do not have any sausage curbs. Hallelujah! So that means we can get over them. of course without going onto the grass, because the grass isn't our friend either. And we can get our left wheels onto the meshy part, pretty much cut that apex, all the while slightly lifting off. And throughout these last couple of corners we are not using any brake at all. We do not touch the brake. Otherwise, if you do, you will lose so much time. Now allow the car to come out over to the right hand sides. You can even allow it to come on the grass a bit, because we want to open up this last corner, this left-hander. So we're about half throttle at this point. Remember, not touching the brake. And then we do the same as we did on the last corner. And as you get here, full throttle. Stamp your foot down on that throttle, allow the car to come over. This runoff here, this curb is a little bit more raised than the other runoffs, so the car will kind of bottom out a little, and you will get the car up here. Now, even with the new damage model, you won't receive any floor damage, but you will receive damage if you end up in the wall, because if you go in the gravel, you're going to lose track. You're going to lose control of your car. So keep it on this AstroTurf, full throttle. Stay on the AstroTurf as well. Don't feel like as soon as you get on it you have to come off of it. Run out to the end of the curb so that the car comes down at a better angle, so it doesn't really bottom out. All the while keeping your foot full on the throttle, all the way down to the end, keeping it tight to these barriers. There's no off tracks here. Full throttle, cover as little track as possible to make up as much time as you can, and over the start finish line. And there we go. That is a walkthrough or drive through Imola. What we'll do now, we'll go as before. We will jump to a couple of flying laps. I'll try and go as quick as I can. Still a lot of time to be made up on my part, but just so that you guys can see that in action and use it, see it in full flow. So here we go, guys, down the main straight, very long main straight, keeping it tight to that curb, all the way down to braking just after 100, down into third, tight to those sausage curbs, not over them. Make use of the runoff where necessary. All the way down into the second chicane, braking just after the 50, trail braking in, down into fourth, keeping it tight, brake a lot more than you think you need to. And then down into the hairpin, braking just after the 50, into second, keeping it tight, accelerating out of the corner, all the way up the hill. Coming into the fast left-hander, braking on the second tree shadow, down into fourth, into the apex, make use of that runoff, full throttle, down into the curb, just as you hit the curb, brake, down into third, try and not run off, very close there, up to the chicane, braking on the 50, turning at the lights, over the corner, once you're through, nice and safe, on the throttle. All the way down to the last couple of corners, keeping it tight to the curb again, braking on the 75, cut the corner, make use of the runoff, cut the corner again, full throttle out of that corner, make use of that runoff, let the car get up on it, keeping it tight to the barriers, use as little track as possible there, and across the line. That was actually a PB for myself at 1:36.6. I'll take that. Finally, guys, I'm going to leave you with the far chase camera angle as a replay of that lap, just so that you can see a different angle. So it's handy to see it from above, to see how close I actually got to those sausage curbs, and in particular the angle of the chicane, how I took the chicane, because it is such a tricky part of this track, and it will end most races. That will be where races are won and lost, and where a lot of iRacing will be picked up and lost too. So I'm going to leave you with this. Remember to hit that like and subscribe button, guys, turn those notifications on, I hope this track guide helps you take some time off your laps this week, and happy racing.